Hello again, everybody. I'm back. I'm glad to be back, and I'm excited to get back to work on YouTube. First, though, I feel like I should address my random disappearance before. There were just other things that were demanding my time and attention, and I had to put my focus towards that. But now I finished up school. I got an internship. I got a nearby internship as a software developer, so that's pretty awesome. But other than that, I'm just here for the summer and ready to get back to work on the game and on YouTube. As for my YouTube schedule, last time I tried to do weekly videos. That was my plan. It ended up being a bit much for me, so I think I'm gonna shoot for 2 weeks this time. I'll aim for a week this first week, kind of see how things go. But I'm thinking it's probably gonna be 2 weeks. I've only carved out about 3 days during the work week to really sit down and work on the game. Mainly because I don't want to burn myself out. I gave myself Tuesday and Thursday to just kind of take it easy. That leaves Saturday and Sunday, Saturday being mostly for working on the game, for most Saturdays, and Sundays will be focused on getting the YouTube video compiled or whatever. As for the plan for the game, since I'm going to be showing it off on YouTube now, I want to make sure it's in pristine condition. So for the first day, I just want to play it for like 15 minutes and just make sure I don't find any bugs. And I know I have a couple already, but I want to just clean the game up so that it's like everything that's in the game right now is working perfectly and there's no issues. Because as soon as that's done, I'm gonna think about starting to implement attacks, like cool attacks. So that's exciting. I've been wanting to do that for a very long time. What I mean by that is I need to, I've thought a lot in this time about kind of how I want to do attacks, and I think I want each page to have its own set of attacks. Maybe I shouldn't be saying this until I know for sure, but that's what I'm thinking right now. That's what I've been thinking for a while. So that's my goal for this week, and I think it's time we got started. Something just brushed past my foot. It was probably a fish. Hello everybody. It is Thursday night at about 8 p.m. It's been about 2 weeks since the last update. The first task that I tried to tackle was the slope interaction. And that was a much bigger task than I expected, and it took me about an entire week. So the problem with the slope was that the character couldn't run up the slope, he'd get stuck at the bottom. And when he ran off the top of the slope, he would bounce down it, and I wanted him to stick to it and be able to run up the slope normally. The way I solved the running up problem was pretty simple. Just the collider, the thing that checks to see if he's on the ground and what he's running into, was just a little bit too big. But the problem with running down the slope was a little trickier. I did a little bit of research on this, and surprisingly, this wasn't an easy problem to solve, even though it's really common. Like pretty much any 2D game, any 2D platformer that has a slope has to deal with this issue. But I was only able to find 2 solutions, and one seemed a little bit above my pay grade, so I went with the one that literally just makes the player really heavy whenever he's on a slope. So basically I made two invisible lines coming off the player called raycasts. One's going out in front of him and one's going down at his feet. The raycast pointing down just checks to see if the player's on the slope. If he is, it will increase the gravity by something crazy, like by 80 or something like that, whatever the units are. It just increases the gravity a ton to make sure the player sticks to the slope. However, with just that, when you try and run back up the slope, as soon as you hit it, the gravity turns to 80 and the player cannot run up the slope. So I had to make another one. The raycast that points out in front of him checks to see if the slope is in front of the player. If it is, that means the player is going up the slope, or at least trying to. And if that's the case, then it turns the gravity back to normal. On top of that, there was another bug with this. If the player jumped while running up the slope, he would just go into the jumping animation and then slide all the way up the slope. And it was really goofy looking, and I had to fix that. When you're on a slope, the player's feet are so close to the ground that the game never actually thought that it left the ground. And because of this, the game registered that the player had hit the jump button, and so it put the player in the jumping animation. But since the player never left the ground, he never lands on the ground. And so the landing animation never finishes, thus the whole jumping animation never completes, so he just gets stuck in the jump animation. In order to fix that, while I'm checking to see if the player is going up the slope, I also push the player a little bit away from the slope if he jumps. I was worried this might make the game feel a little bit wonky when you're jumping on the slopes, but it didn't change it too much. In fact, I felt like the game felt pretty much the same. And when running around on the slopes and jumping and everything, I think it feels nice. It can be a little bit weird if you just run up the slope and do like your shortest possible jump. But this is the case in a lot of games. If you're going uphill and you spam the jump button, you can just do really fast jumps. That's basically what happens here. And so I'm fine with that. And I kind of like the way it all turned out. Anyway, after that came the knockback, which was another kind of tough issue. It didn't take me quite as long to fix, but the problem here was that when the player was hit by the enemy, he didn't get pushed back, he was actually teleported a small amount backward. Obviously the problem with that is if you're standing next to a wall and you get hit, you're gonna teleport through the wall, which is bad. So I thought the fix to this would be simple, and I know I tried to fix this a long time ago briefly. All you have to do is, instead of teleporting, you can literally just call a method called add force, which just pushes the player in whatever direction you tell him to, and by however much force you tell it to. However, when I tried to run this, it wouldn't work. The player didn't really get affected at all. I had to dig around in my code a little bit to find out why. And basically there were just other parts of the game that were controlling the player's velocity. And because of this, I think the force was being added, but it was being overwritten so quickly by those other objects of the game that were controlling the player's velocity. So in order to fix that, I just had to disable that part. Whatever was controlling the player, I just had to disable it for a second as soon as the player comes in contact with an enemy's hitbox. After that, I knocked out a few more tasks pretty quickly. The pausing twice thing was a really easy and really fast fix. I also made a little bit of an enhancement to the menu. If you hit the escape button while you're in the tab menu or the equipment menu, whatever you want to call it, it will actually close the tab menu and pause the game, which is just kind of like a little shortcut. If you want to pause it while you're in the tab menu, you can do that. I actually forgot to tackle the bat spasm. I can't imagine that's a big fix, but I will get to that. It's just the bat gets too close to me and then it doesn't know which way to face. And besides that one, that leaves our checklist with a couple of saving issues, and that is it. I don't think those will take too long, but that is kind of in some confusing code. It's in a script. It involves a few scripts, one of them being my save manager, which I haven't looked at in a long time, and it's also the very first saving manager I've ever created. Not very experienced with writing data to files, so that one, I'm thinking if I just dedicate a few hours, I can knock both of those out. I'm probably going to take care of those off camera though. This weekend I've got to go home for a wedding, and I'll probably be hanging out with my family for most of the weekend. And the 4th of July is coming up, so. And with that, that wraps up the second devlog for Let There Be Light. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.